September 15th, 2019. Eric Rowan pins Roman Reigns. To this day, only the second last man to do so. He's beaten the Tribal Chief, he's fresh off a SmackDown Tag Team title run, he's reunited with Luke Harper, things are looking great. Then he gets drafted to Raw, gets eliminated from the Rumble in seconds, Drew McIntyre murders his pet while everyone cheers, and then he gets released. The 15th of April 2020. It's a day of mourning for Eric Rowan fans. Not just Eric Rowan fans, but for Rusev fans, Zack Ryder fans, Leo Rush fans, Epico fans. I'm sure you had a few. But also EC3 fans. However, that morning quickly turned into excitement as fans got to ask, where will EC3 go next? AEW? Ring of Honor? The Indies? Well, there is no independent scene, there isn't even a Ring of Honor. WWE decided to release everyone during the pandemic, so there's literally nowhere for anyone to go. But for EC3 fans, there's light at the end of the tunnel, because in July of 2020, EC3 returned home to Impact Wrestling. This is going to be the beginning of something special, a run that we will never forget. He showed up, he had a cinematic match with Moose where he got his head kicked in, and that was it. That was EC3's return to Impact. But little did we know that this was not the end of anything. This was actually the beginning. A preview of something better. Something that would be announced in the coming months.
Consider themselves essential.
Essential. Decide that following the status quo is nothing more than just an illusion.
You bet on yourself.
You bet on yourself. You bet on yourself on the grandest stage of them all.
Fuck me, that is actually one of the worst video packages I've ever seen. They're in their late 30s, man. Braun Strowman was already hated for the compassion that he showed independent wrestlers who were losing their jobs in the pandemic. Killer Kross was hated because he was liking weird anti-vax stuff and he hangs out with the QAnon crew, if I'm pronouncing that right. Already, from the beginning, people taking the piss out of this announcement was getting more traction than the announcement itself. And while we're on the topic of the response to this announcement, let's read through some of the responses. This woman is quite happy. She says she has her tickets for Orlando and she can't wait. Nightmare Blunt Rotation. Shit feels like a promo for January 6th. It's like the NWO if all three guys were Hulk Hogan. A show for guys who've seen Fight Club way too many times and took the complete wrong message away from it. They couldn't wait for Jackson Riker's 90 days to get in on this. Apparently, controlling your narrative is just saying control your narrative for 2 years and nothing else. 4chan Horseman. When being a grumpy white dude is your whole personality. This video feels like it'll call me a slur. There's a lot to laugh at with Control Your Narrative, but I think number one is the idea that Braun Strowman was a creative guru waiting to unleash his genius onto the world for 6 years. Rumours start to generate then, with some lad on Reddit claiming that the promotion was being backed by a variety of right-wing affiliated groups and organisations, potentially even Donald Trump himself. And he proved that this was true by... well, that doesn't really matter, but hundreds of people believed him regardless. Okay, so now it's time for the roster announcement. Maybe this is where the tide will turn. Maybe this is where they win back all the doubters by bringing in a fan favourite, a game changer, someone who will show the world that Control Your Narrative means business. Oh, good fuck. Some people were happy enough with this announcement, others not so much. Austin Aries had his own response to the backlash, and some would say it's quite a fair response.
Why is it okay for women to say, oh, you're 5 feet on dating sites? You should be dead? That's okay?
So there's a bit of confusion over what Control Your Narrative is. People don't really get it. But you know what? I think those people are just immature because it says right here in their disclaimer what the show is meant to be. It's a show intended for a mature and astute audience. So maybe that's just their issue. I see no issues with this promotion. In fact, I bought some of their merch just to show my support, and I think they're pretty hip. Pretty trendy shirts. We live in a society and it fucking sucks. That's pretty cool, is it not? You are not the word no. I like this one especially because it's true. I'm actually the word Kian. So, you know, this helps narrow down the words if people are trying to guess my name. But we now reach the most iconic chapter in Control Your Narrative's entire history. You see this, yeah? $99 VIP tickets to their big show, yeah? Basically, they needed something to spice up their show and implore more fans to spend $99 on a ticket. So here's what they came up with. You see this room, yeah? This looks like a nice, normal, beautiful room. But this is no normal room. No. This is the rant room. This is where you get to yell, scream, and berate your least favourite wrestler for 3 minutes with zero consequences. Hey, Braun. The jerk store called. They're all out of you. Braun, you alright, man? No, you know, I didn't mean like that. No, it was only a joke. I literally, you know, I wouldn't mean like that. You know, I wouldn't mean, no, EC3, no, look, no, look, it's nothing like that. I swear, I didn't mean like that. Man, it was just a joke. I was only messing. It was a joke. Someone is going to pay to use CYN's rant room and just walk in and start jacking it. And that'll be the last we ever hear about CYN's rant room. Tricking Vladimir Putin into entering the Control Your Narrative rant room and then giving him a proper telling off for 3 minutes. That could have saved the world a lot of hassle. Just walk into the room with Flip Gordon and set down a globe on the table and stare at him for 3 minutes. And speaking of Flip Gordon, they also signed Flip Gordon, probably the most Control Your Narrative wrestler ever created. To make things even better, the cool, edgy, anti-corporation promotion wants to be the first wrestling promotion in the metaverse. To be fair, if there was ever a promotion to find success through targeting their audience on Facebook, it's probably that. And speaking of success, Control Your Narrative finally made their debut show in front of a raucous crowd. Adam Scherr kicked the child, but accidentally, so that's good. He also invited the NWO to join Control Your Narrative after the show. I invited Antigone from Love Island to a nice little McDonald's date, and it appears that both of us are still waiting for replies. They ran a show on WrestleMania weekend, the ideal time to run a show where once again, Adam Scherr felt the need to give his input on the situation. This will be the only place to be on March 31st, unless you want to watch a bunch of dorks choreograph dance with each other for no reason at all. We don't do that garbage in the narrative because we actually fight. Wrestlers are taking the piss out of the promotion, their website domains have been held hostage, and Kayfabe News tried to write a satirical article about it, but nothing ended up being funnier than the real thing. We get an AMA on Reddit with EC3, ask him anything. One person wants the event to be cancelled because they believe he's a Nazi. It goes ahead anyway. The AMA did a couple of interesting things. First of all, EC3 declared that he's not a Nazi, so that's good. Then he was asked about the Austin Aries allegations, to which he said, "I have looked him dead in the eye and asked him if those accusations are true. He looked me back and said, no, I can only take someone at their word." Perfect. Why bother with court cases at all? Just say it wasn't you. However, another interesting aspect of this AMA was when he explained some of the logic behind Control Your Narrative. The idea is we were underground. There's no authority figure. Fights were over when you tapped out, quit, knocked out, or can't stand. As we grow, our live events are sanctioned in a traditional sense. There's an official, a referee, pinfall, submissions, and the rules of wrestling apply. The fight in life is not usually against someone else. Life's fight is that of you, fighting what's inside. Limited belief, fear, apprehensions. The idea is that through the art of combat, you can defeat your greatest opponent. Yourself. That's the win. And it sounded cool as shit. Does it? It doesn't really, to be fair. Like, I hate to shit on someone's enthusiasm, but it actually does sound quite terrible. But they ran another show, and this one included a dark match.
This is crazy. It's literally a dark match.
So I figured after all this talk about Control Your Narrative that I'd watch one of their shows. By the way, here are the rules, just so you're all aware of them. And yeah, this is what I thought of the show. EC3 opened it up with a speech. Waffle. Complete waffle. This fella stumbled across a Wikipedia page for philosophy and thought, wow, I am smart. Effectively, his style is to just say a lot of words, because if he says a lot of words, then mathematically, there'll surely be one or two useful words thrown in there. Scotty 2 Hotty, that is Phoenix wrestling superstar Scotty 2 Hotty, who you can see in Cork City on 23rd July, he comes out and you're proper buzzing because it's Scotty 2 Hotty. But then they have this narrator that talks over his entrance.
Nostalgia is the denial of the painful present. As fans, we hear the same songs. We watch the same moves.
And it's kind of like you've taken a really good spot in the front row, but you've accidentally stood yourself next to this really annoying fan that won't stop talking to you. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually like the narrator. I think it's different, but one moment that had me bursting out laughing was when Vincent wrestled Killer Kross. We get to the crucial point of the match. Kross has Vincent in trouble. Vincent, instead of recovering and fighting back, he turns the wrong way around and kind of like when you play an old SmackDown game and you touch the arrows to move instead of the analog stick and you taunt your opponent by accident, he basically did that, and then the narrator's just like,
breaking the chains of the corporate machine have unleashed the instincts of a man with killer in his name. Each blow is the release of the confines, restrictions, and bad creative of Kross's past.
Pal, was I talking to you? It's not even that deep. It's literally his job to win the match. That's literally all that's on his job description. Win match. Why are you talking over the ending? The Project Pit. So this is interesting, right? 5 Control Your Narrative wrestlers stood next to each other on the stage. Then EC3 gets on the mic and one by one goes through each of them and talks about their individual problems publicly. Such as, oh, you have addiction problems. Oh, you've a broken home. You've got a history of robbing and stealing. And it just kind of reminded me of that time John Anik mentioned that both fighters were fighting for custody of their children. Then the final fellow was told that he was project number 1, and to prove that he was number 1 for a reason, so he shouted really loudly, which presumably was the proof that EC3 was asking for. Then 5 other lads came out and beat them. And I cannot explain to you how much I laughed at this, some lad called Death came out and beat the shit out of them for no reason.
While Ryzen and Man Bun Jesus with the Groovy Grizzly have controlled their narrative.
In the Project Pit, victories are rewarded by the opportunity of death. If the wrestling landscape is truly a living hell, then his gatekeeper is bulletproof. The gatekeeper is death.
You can tell from listening to the narrator that they thought this was going to be the coolest shit ever, and I think it's one of those things that's a lot cooler in your head, but still, it was entertaining. Then we get Dirty Dango versus Flip Gordon. Flip Gordon wins, and then after the match, the interviewer asks, "You've just had your narrative controlled. How do you feel?" Which is one of the weirdest questions I've ever heard. Then we have Austin Aries, and he has opinions. The commentator says that Austin Aries has been cancelled, but still, he competes in front of us today almost as if cancellation isn't real and people just don't like him. They also said that Weston Blake potentially should have been world champion somewhere else, and presumably they're talking about the Funkin' Conservatory, because otherwise that is one of the most generous statements ever uttered on commentary. Then there was a talking segment that I skipped quite hard, and now it's time for the main event. Adam Scherr and EC3 are teaming up, and perhaps now would be a good time to reflect on Control Your Narrative as a wrestling promotion. Is Control Your Narrative the worst promotion in the world? No. At least they're trying something different. Yes, it's fucking cheesy, but I'd rather watch a promotion try and do something different than a safe standard promotion that puts on 4-hour-long shows with 11 matches on them. Fucking hell, calm it down, lads. 3 hours max. Please. But Control Your Narrative's fatal flaw, their Achilles heel, their... I can't think of another word for it, but it was their marketing, right? Instead of saying, hey, we're the cinematic promotion that doesn't currently exist in today's American wrestling market, they said, we're free now. We get to express ourselves, man, in the most waffly, uncool, generic, typical way you could possibly imagine, with wrestlers that people already don't like. They had absolutely no self-awareness, and as a result, every time they put themselves forward as this cool, edgy alternative, they present themselves pretty much as a laughingstock. And in a wrestling landscape which now already features a legitimate alternative to WWE and many smaller indie promotions that consistently produce banging shows, Control Your Narrative needed to state what their intentions were and what their place in the wrestling world was, but instead they decided to go all big brain and failed to communicate their point. Ironically, Control Your Narrative failed to control their narrative. So, can they salvage anything at this point? They'd need something big. Something major, something to win over all the fans, and I don't know if they're going to get bigger than WWE.